Max Fried returns, and the Atlanta Braves continue their winning streak as they take down the San Diego Padres on Monday. But our question to be answered on this Taco Tuesday is, who is the Atlanta Braves left fielder when everyone is healthy? That's what we'll discuss on this episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jacob Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at shortstopball. Also, make sure you check out my written work over at bravestoday.com. Make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any comments, questions, or feedback that you have for the podcast. Always enjoy hearing from you, the listener. Also, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button to help support the show. And thank you to all of our everydayers out there for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Shout out to Matthew Brittingham, Jake Brown, Hunter Stevens, and Doc, who let me know in the comment section on our last video that they are everydayers. I know there's a lot of others out there as well. I appreciate all of the support on the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/MLB60 and use code MLB60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Make sure you go check that out. I did HelloFresh a couple weeks ago, and it was very beneficial for me and my family. So go ahead and give them a check and use our promo code as well. That also helps support the show. On today's podcast, we'll have our Taco Tuesday segment. We're going to discuss who is the Braves left fielder when everybody is healthy. And then we're also going to get into a Monday night's game where Max Fried returned to the mound, and he looked like Max Fried. And let's start right there with that. The Atlanta Braves get a 2-0 win on Monday night over the San Diego Padres. And if you had bet me $1 million after the first inning that the Braves wouldn't score another run in that game, I probably would have lost $1 million because they came out of the gates swinging against Ryan Weathers, and it looked like this offense was going to put up a bunch of numbers, but that didn't happen. And it was a 2-run homer from Austin Riley in the first inning. That was all the scoring in the game for either side. And thankfully, that was all that was needed because Max Fried returned to the mound for the Atlanta Braves, and he was Max Fried. I love watching him pitch. I say it all the time. Braves fans are so fortunate right now for so many reasons, but you get to see both sides of pitching with the Atlanta Braves. You get to see Max Fried, who can just pinpoint accuracy, keep hitters off balance, get weak contact, and just be an artist out there, like a Greg Maddux, like a Tom Glavine. And then on Tuesday night, you're going to get to see Spencer Strider, who is just that pure, today type of pitcher of dominance, of just throwing extremely hard and using every ounce of energy from the get-go, which I think we'll see Spencer Strider get back to more of that John Smoltz type of mold. So the Braves, again, just like in the 90s, you're kind of getting to see both those aspects of pitching. You're getting to see an artist in Max Fried, and you're getting to see that powerful, dominant type of pitcher in Spencer Strider. Both, I think, are aces in my opinion, and will be able to compete for Cy Young Awards for several years to come. But let's focus on Max Fried and what he looked like in his return, because again, for me, he looked spectacular. He looked like the Max Fried we saw in spring training. He liked the Max Fried we saw in a brief appearance in his first outing of the year before he had to leave, where he just had everything working. 5 innings, 4 hits. 3 of those were, and these are the hits that Max Fried typically gives up. He gives up a lot of weak contact. He gets a lot of weak contact, and unfortunately, that leads to some weak hits. And really, 3 of those were pretty weak. One of those, was barely a hard hit ball, but no walks in this game, which we'll talk more about that in the second. It was really hard to get a walk in this game with the strike zone. No runs allowed, 4 strikeouts, 79 pitches in 5 innings, which he had to throw over 20 pitches in the first inning. He had a little bit of trouble in that first inning. Von Grissom actually made a pretty good play to help him get out of that first and third 2-out jam, but really kind of settled in after that, going through a very good Padres lineup. I really wanted him to come back out for that 6th inning just because I love watching him pitch, and I thought he was in complete control, but understand not wanting to push him after not pitching for 2.5 weeks. So certainly, understand the decision. But man, I wanted to see more of Max Fried because he looked so good. I mentioned he had everything working. He had 4 called strikes on the curveball. Seemed like it was a lot more than that to me. It seemed like he was able to get that curveball over for strikes pretty much whenever he wanted to. And when he missed with that curveball, he wasn't missing over the heart of the plate. So I thought he got a really good curveball going. Fastball velocity was there, is averaging 94 miles per hour, which is where he typically is. I saw him get up to 98. It was actually the one pitch that was in the box that wasn't called a strike on this evening, but he dotted 98 up in a way that should have been strike 3. But I love what he did with the fastball to righties, especially was jamming it in to righties and they couldn't get to it. And then he followed that up. He had a good changeup working away from righties as well. And then obviously that good curveball, like I said, he just had everything working. It was really fun to watch. I mentioned he gets weak contact. How about 78 mile per hour average exit velocity against Max Fried? That is an insane average exit velocity against for a pitcher, 78 miles per hour. They weren't barreling up anything against Max Fried. He only gave up 1 hard hit ball the entire game through those 5 innings. And again, he only had 4 strikeouts. A lot of these balls were getting put in play. A lot of his outs were on balls in play. So again, he looked like vintage Max Fried. He looked like the Cy Young contending Max Fried, and that is certainly great. Give this man his contract extension. Can't wait to see what Max Fried has in store the rest of the season. Mentioned Austin Riley, the 2-run homer early, and that's all the offense in this game. Braves had some opportunities and just couldn't come through. They left 2 on in the 2nd inning. They had a leadoff walk in the 3rd inning. Grissom grounded into a force out. I thought Ozzie might have been safe at second base there after Machado bobbled it, but Braves had already lost their review, and then Von Grissom gets picked off, and that inning quickly goes away. They had bases loaded. This was the one here where the Braves should have just completely, taken this game over. Bases loaded, no outs with Matt Olson coming up. He misses a couple of fastballs really right down the middle and then strikes out on a pretty good slider running away from him. And then Riley comes up, first pitch, ground ball to Machado for an easy double play. I mean, bases loaded, no out for your 2 and 3 hitters, and 4 pitches later, you get nothing, and the inning is over. That one right there was really killer, and I thought it was going to come back to bite the Braves. You had 2 on and 2 outs for Riley in the 6th inning. He got rung up on a call that was way out of the strike zone, but that's what I want to talk about next, and I discussed this on the postcast with Grant McCauley, which you can get on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube or on your Locked On Braves podcast feed. You got to talk about the strike zone Monday night, and unfortunately that's the case, but it had a huge impact, in my opinion, on this game. Now, it was consistent, maybe consistently bad, but he was consistently giving 2 to 3 inches out of the strike zone, and we were getting called strikes. And I think once hitters realized that, you saw a bunch of hitters start to be a little bit more aggressive, not wanting to get to 2 strikes. I mean, and it went both ways. I mentioned the call on Riley, where 2-strike call in a big spot with runners on base, and he gets rung up on a pitch that, I mean, is 2 to 3 inches off the plate up and away. There's nothing Riley could do except maybe try to foul it off. And then there was a spot with Max Fried against Xander Bogaerts, where Bogaerts got a strike call and a 3-1 count on a pitch that was way inside. And then Max Fried, as the veteran does, goes right back in there on the 3-2 pitch and forces Bogaerts to swing at it and miss for the strikeout. So the strike zone had a huge impact on this game, and why I think there weren't a lot of runs scored. The Braves somehow got 4 walks in this game. Braves pitchers only allowed 1, but the strike zone was very big, and I think it led to a lot of outs. I thought it led to a lot of hitters being overly aggressive. Now, the bullpen had to cover a lot of innings because Max Fried only went 5 with, them not wanting to push him. Dylan Lee was great. He got through the top of the order in the 6th inning very easily. Jesse Chavez, I don't know how he does it, but he did it. First and second, one out with Machado up. Machado hits the hardest hit ball of the game for the Padres, but thankfully it goes right to Ozzie Albies for an easy inning-ending double play. And you saw Jesse Chavez just smiling as he walked off the mound, knowing he got away with one there. But he gets through it. A.J. Minter comes in, closes the door, and it's another win. 7 wins in a row for the Atlanta Braves, who continue to have the best record in the National League. So again, on kind of a weird night with the strike zone, I think dictating a lot of that game and the outcome, the Braves get some runs early, get some great pitching, and continue their winning streak. All right, next we'll turn our attention to left field for our Taco Tuesday segment. I asked a lot of you who should be the starting left fielder for the Atlanta Braves when fully healthy. We'll answer that next. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across 30 MLB teams. Talked about them on here before. You see them all over the place. This is a really fun and engaging fantasy game, especially you like cards, you want to compete against other people with those cards, collect them. This is a great game for you. I've been doing it for a while, and it's a lot of fun. I got a Luis Robert card this past week that I'm really excited to use. They go through 3 or 4 day cycles, so usually 2 cycles a week where you use your cards, compete against other players, and try to win really great prizes as the level and competition goes up. You can win scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. And again, prizes may vary depending on the level of competition, but head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's SORARE.com to draft your team of free players, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. All right, this will be my last podcast for a little while. We're going on vacation, going to the most magical place on earth. We're going to Disney World, so pray for us heavily here. But I will be out for the next week, so apologize for that. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta, as Grant will have some solo postcasts coming up for you. I will have one more on Tuesday night. I'll cover that game on the postcast, and then I'll be off for an entire week. So again, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta to get those postcasts with Grant McCauley. And then we'll be back a week from now. We'll have a lot to catch up on. I hate I'm going to miss that Houston Astros series, but I didn't schedule this vacation, but it should be a lot of fun. So I appreciate all your support. Hopefully you'll all still be here next week when I get back. But this is our Taco Tuesday segment. And today we're going to talk about the left field position, because here we are, almost 3 weeks into the season now. And I still don't think the Braves have a left fielder. And especially when healthy, my question was that I asked on Twitter, who should be the left fielder for the Atlanta Braves when fully healthy? When Michael Harris returns, it's likely Eli White gets sent back down. And I do think Michael Harris returns this weekend in Houston, as long as his batting practice goes okay early this week. It looks like he could return in Houston unless he needs a rehab assignment, which I don't think that he will. But I know a lot of you asked me in the comment section on yesterday's video when I think Michael Harris returns, and I think it will be this weekend. But when he comes back, Eli White is probably the one that is sent back down. So that leaves your left field options as Eddie Rosario, Sam Hilliard, Kevin Pillar, and Marcell Ozuna. Hilliard's played the best so far, in my opinion, a 976 OPS in 10 games. He has an 18.8% walk rate, which is great, but he has an absurdly bad 43.8% strikeout rate. But I also really like having him out there defensively. He's been able to play some center field with Michael Harris out. I really just think it makes the outfield more athletic when you have Hilliard out there, especially if you have Harris in center and Acuna right. I think that's an outstanding defensive setup. So Hilliard's probably my choice. Eddie and Ozuna just don't need to be in the outfield if you can help it at all. Now, Eddie, I think, has been okay out there defensively. I think he's looked fine, and he has a pretty solid arm. I honestly don't care to see Ozuna in the outfield again. You know my feelings on Ozuna overall. I think he has to earn playing time at this point. Pick your spots, whatever, see if you can get him going. But in my mind, there are other guys on this roster who are deserving of those at-bats over Ozuna, who had some pretty good swings on Monday night. But again, until he really gets going and proves to you that he can be a consistently good hitter, part of this lineup, I think you got to give some other guys opportunities. I don't really like Kevin Pillar, though, as an everyday player. I mean, he's fine as a spot starter, pinch runner, defensive replacement, essentially what Guillermo Heredia has been doing the last couple of years, but he's not a solution for me in left field. And I know he's somewhat being used as a platoon option. I don't really see that either. I'm sorry. I don't know if you love Kevin Pillar. No offense to him. He's had a great career, but at this point, I just don't see him as a real option out there. To me, it comes down to either Rosario and Hilliard, both lefties, so you can't platoon them. Of the options for me, I think it's Sam Hilliard, just because of that defensive versatility that he has. If you're not going to get much production offensively out of that spot, then at least put somebody out there that's going to help you win games defensively. So in my mind, when Michael Harris is back, I think the easy choice is to have Sam Hilliard out there pretty much every day, especially when there's a righty on the mound, which the Braves continue to face lefty starters. It seems like half of their games so far have been against lefties. But I think it's Hilliard in left field and then Rosario at DH when Michael Harris comes back. I was really bummed, and it seems kind of crazy to be upset about the Braves losing Jordan Luplow, but I was really bummed when the Braves lost Luplow because I thought he would be a perfect platoon partner with Sam Hilliard, as Luplow has crushed lefties in his career. But unfortunately, the Braves lost him earlier this season through waivers. And so now I don't know who that right-handed platoon partner is. Again, I don't think Pillar's necessarily the answer there. That might be what it is, but I don't see him as an upside platoon type player. Not somebody that just mashes left-handed pitching at this point. Now, what about Vaughn Grissom? Because a lot of you asked about this on Twitter as well, and I was going to mention it. If the bat really plays, do the Braves look to try Grissom in left field once Arcia returns? Because again, we're talking when the team's fully healthy, who's the left fielder? Not this year, in my opinion, or at least not now. He needs all the reps at shortstop that he can get. You've seen it. He had his struggles his first game up. Still looks a little iffy out there at times. He needs all the reps that he can get at shortstop to prove, or to at least, answer the question, can he be a long-term solution at shortstop? So in my mind, you give him all this year. He's still just 22 years old to determine that, to see what his future is. And if, it's not looking like that's going to be the case, or maybe Arcia just continues to play this well and he is the shortstop going forward, I do think you have to find a way to get Grissom's bat in there. And I think Grissom being in the lineup is the Braves' best lineup. Whether you work him in as a, utility player, play him in left field, play him at short, second some, put in the DH spot, whatever the case may be, I think the bat of Grissom will play. And I think the Braves' best lineup is with him in there. But I don't think, at least now, he is a solution in left field. I think that's a next year possibility. Trade options, really too early for that. And I don't think they make a big splash this year like a Brian Reynolds, but we'll have to see once we get closer to the trade deadline. I do not anticipate them making any type of big trade now in order to make an upgrade out there in left field. At most, I think right now, maybe they go out and try to find another right-handed platoon bat to replace the loss of Luplow. But again, even that, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Alex Antablis has done a fantastic job at trade deadlines in the past, finding those veteran bats who could potentially be, good clubhouse guys, especially, but also perhaps have a little bit more in the tank. Some thoughts from Twitter when I asked this question. Megan Jones says Pillar with Rosario DHing. Courtney Jones, don't know if they're related, said Hilliard against left-handed pitchers and to be determined against right-handed pitchers. I think she meant that the other way around. Hilliard versus right-handed pitchers and to be determined against left-handed pitchers, but not Marcel, Courtney says. Michael Brown, I think I'd go with Eddie, but Hilliard has played well so far. Robert Mosley says they don't have an everyday guy. It's a legit platoon situation, which is probably the correct answer. John Seeley says Hilliard versus right-handed pitchers and Eddie DH, Pillar versus lefties with Travis d'Arnaud or Murphy at DH. And I think that's a pretty good answer as well. And Joanna, Jared, and Aegon all said Hilliard. So a lot of you kind of with me thinking that Hilliard's probably the option out there, again, especially against right-handed pitchers. But going back to Robert's point, the Braves don't have an everyday guy right now, in my opinion, until one of these guys gets everyday reps and one of them gets hot and really takes off, which we haven't seen yet. And nobody's really gotten that opportunity yet. Cause like I said, we faced a lot of lefties starters early in this season. I don't think the Braves have an everyday option in left field at this moment. So again, I think it is a platoon situation going forward when everybody's healthy. I think Sam Hilliard should get the majority of those starts in left field. Cause like I said, if none of these guys are really going to hit, at least put your best defender out there. And so in my mind, that's Sam Hilliard. So we'll see what happens once Harris returns again, hopefully this weekend. But again, we're almost 3 weeks into the season, still pretty early, but the left field job is still, in my opinion, very much up for grabs. All right, next we'll turn our attention to game 2 of this Padres series, where again, we'll have Spencer Strider on the mound going up against another familiar foe and Blake Snell. We'll talk about that next. All right, it'll be the Braves and Padres in game 2 on Tuesday night. As I mentioned, it'll be Spencer Strider on the mound going up against Blake Snell. And I talked about this on the postcast yesterday, but something really interesting from Spencer Strider in after his last game. He talked about the fact that, he tried to dial it back a little bit, and you've seen his velocity down. And he said he did that in an effort to try to work deeper into games, which I honestly thought at the time was a smart thing if you can do that. But to his point, that's not who he is. And he thinks that's held him back a little bit. And he talked about wanting to get back to where he was before, what he was doing last year, where it was just full bore right out of the gate. And so if we get that Spencer Strider back, he's been pretty dominant already. He's had 9 strikeouts in each of his first 3 games. But, if he gets back to being that, aggressive starting pitcher right out of the gate, pumping 98, 99 consistently, we'll see what that does. Again, he's been very good, but he hasn't been as efficient. And I think he was hoping by dialing it back a little bit, saving 98, 99 for when he needs it, that would help him be more efficient. It hasn't been the case through the first 3 starts. So again, I'm very curious to see what Spencer Strider looks like this time out. As for the Braves, facing another lefty starter in Blake Snell, who, as you know, has had a very good career. The Braves just saw him not long ago, though, but want to see the offense get after it. A little bit of a quiet night on Monday. Again, I think a lot of that had to do with the strike zone for both sides, but hopefully the offense can get out there, put up some big runs. Spencer Strider have a great start. Want to see him get through at least 6 innings and kind of help out that bullpen, and Braves continue their winning streak, obviously. Again, this will be it for me on the podcast for a week. We'll be back next Wednesday with another podcast. So until then, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta, where you'll get the postcast with Grant McCauley while I am out. But thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of every day. Again, thank you to all our everydayers out there. If you are one, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. Again, thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. You can follow me at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.